I'll get started. My name is James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Cannabis Control Board. Today is Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. It's 1:03 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Before we get started with the agenda, I wanted to add an executive session related to hemp. And I'd like to do that, I guess, right before the adjournment. So once we finish the overcoming presumptive disqualification. A lot on the agenda today, so I'll keep my comments short. I wanted to express my disappointment with the outcome of H321 today. We'll be going through it later, kind of section by section, but all three of us have heard from our very first meeting and countless times since then that small cultivators, who really are the backbone of this industry, they're the ones with the kind of commitment, decades-long commitment for caring for these plants and breeding the best genetics. And then taking the leap of faith with all of us by bringing them in to this regulated market are going to suffer the hardest for their efforts without a pathway to direct consumer that would be available for any other agricultural product in the state. I know many feel like we are the roadblock to that happening. However, from my perspective, I see a board that is willing to stretch our resources and do what we can to create pathways towards common sense laws and regulations. I think that's a very different situation than almost any other regulatory, cannabis body in any other adult use state. I know the farmers market proposal that passed the Senate was not what most preferred, but it was a product of compromise and incremental change. And it was the only proposal that had enough support to make it out of the three House committees that have jurisdiction over the issue. And the fact that that proposal couldn't even clear the House floor, the same House that just this year, made permanent the practice of bars and restaurants selling pre-made cocktails to people in their cars curbside, I think should provide some indication of the amount of stigma that still exists for this industry. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of opportunities to meet with your legislator and kind of, help normalize the fact that you guys are, tax generating, employee hiring businesses that deserve to be treated like other businesses. I wanted to mention that our rules, our proposed rules, are on their way to LCAR and may be in place before our next meeting, depending on how things go with LCAR. If that is the case, we have a placeholder event for a peer networking event in July that we may use to highlight some of the important changes in those rules. If we don't do it in July, we'll certainly have guidance prepared describing the changes, and maybe we can add an agenda item to our next meeting to go through the rules. Those rules will contain the new regulations related to the medical use endorsement. Our contract for the enhanced bud tender education is still being finalized by the various agencies that need to look at it, but we are getting very close. Once the rules have been adopted and that contract is in place, we will provide guidance to retailers on how to get that endorsement. But just to be clear, it's not looking like we're going to be issuing those on July 1st. That's all I have. Julia, you mentioned that you had an update on some opportunities.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that we received an update from ACCD that they're working with VTSU and they're working on the development of a short in-person workshop series for social equity applicants. This is all very in development and they are hoping to pilot it by the end of the summer. So I'm sure we'll get more information as that develops.
That's great. Kyle, anything from you?
Nope, just echoing your opening remarks.
So we have to approve minutes from our evidentiary hearing on May 14th, our last regular board meeting on May 28th. And then we also had an evidentiary hearing earlier this month on the 11th.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving to the agenda. Next up is public comment. We'll handle this the same way we always do. If you join via the link and would like to comment, please raise your virtual hands. Or, you know what? We'll start with everyone who's in the room. Does anyone in the room want to make a public comment?
You've heard enough from me today.
Okay. All right. So if anyone joined by phone or the video link and would like to make a public comment, please raise your virtual hand. We'll then move to people that joined by phone. And we'll start with Elizabeth.
Yes, hi. I'm just wanting to comment and say thank you very, very much for the decision that you made about packaging waivers last time. I really appreciate, first of all, that you listened and took seriously the materials that I and other people sent in, and also for the decision that you made, which has made an enormous difference to our business. And I just wanted to express appreciation. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone else who joined by the video link, just raise your virtual hand. And if you joined by a phone and would like to comment, you can unmute your phone by hitting *6. Okay. I will close the public comment window and move to Olga for our executive director report.
Okay. This might be. Yeah. Thank you.
Hopefully it works this time.
Hopefully with Kyle's presence. It's gonna work.
Technical.
Let's see. First page is good. So here we are, June 25th Executive Director Report. Okay. Looks like we're in business. So yes, a quick update on the educational and outreach initiatives. We had our peer networking event in partnership with Department of Agriculture staff earlier this month. And again, as the chair mentioned, we're still working on our July peer networking event, and it could be on the route, depending how things work out with LCAR. Regardless, Patrick will advertise broadly the date, time, and subject once we finalize our plans. So stay tuned for that. Okay. And now onto the adult use program licensing data. All data is current as of June 18th, unless noted otherwise on the individual slides. One kind of focus for this month will be the data on relinquishments. So we'll have quite a few slides on that topic. So first, it's a new slide here. So you can see here a snapshot of all active licenses over the past year. And hopefully it allows folks to visualize the trends and fluctuations here. The numbers, if you look back in June of 2024, you could see that the number was 567. And then we peaked at 632 in April. And we've slightly tapered to 618 this month. So we'll definitely continue to monitor this data to keep our finger on the pulse of the health of the market and look for any anomalies in the number and the health of our market. All right, moving on to another slide on active licenses. You've seen this one before. This slide focuses on the most recent 3 months window. So we can see the short-term licensing trends. Again, 618 active licenses, and the only notable shift is a modest reduction in the cultivator category months over months. Again, we'll continue watching the dynamics here given the board's focus on our grower community. So no changes in any other license types months over months. Okay. And just a quick look at the priority status slide. No changes here months over months. Okay. Staying with our cultivators, a couple familiar slides here. Again, as I noted before, we are reporting a decrease of 9 cultivators months over months, as you've seen in the prior slide, including a couple indoor, a couple mixed, and 5 outdoor. And we'll look at those numbers closer in the next few slides. Obviously, as you could see, our indoor tier 1 remains to be the most represented tier. Right. Again, another slide on the cultivators. You're looking at the type and tier, and again, it just shows you 3 months of data, situations within individual. We've seen drops in every indoor tier this past months, a couple in indoor, mixed outdoor, and we also are showing it a loss of 1 outdoor tier 4 cultivator. Yep. So there is.
They didn't move to a different tier. They relinquished.
They relinquished. They chose to relinquish it. Okay. And so another very familiar slide. A quick look at the licensed canopy capacity square footage data. 12 months of data here. Indoor is in green, outdoor is in yellow. The total amount of licensed canopy is 947,500 square feet, which is down 21,000 square feet when compared to the month of May. But so far, the numbers are remaining fairly steady with minor fluctuations, but definitely we are keeping a closer look at this data. And now we'll focus just on the relinquishments. Again, several slides here for you. First, we're looking at the June relinquishments specifically. We are reporting a total of 11, including 9 cultivators. They're color-coded with our standard group being in orange, and green is for our economic empowerment. We did not report any social equity folks relinquishing in June, and you can see that 9 cultivators and 2 manufacturers relinquished in June. So that is June data. And now we'll actually take a step back, and the next few slides, the data in the next few slides is going back 2 fiscal years. So now that we are wrapping up fiscal year 25, we're looking at the numbers for FY 24 and 25. And again, huge thanks to our data manager, Liz, for pulling all of those numbers and compiling this data. So on this slide, FY 24 relinquishments are in blue, and FY 25 are in orange. So 77 licenses were relinquished in 24, and 94 licenses were relinquished, have been relinquished so far this year. So that's a quick overview, and I will dive deeper into those numbers next, so we could get a better view where attrition is happening. So first, we'll look at their cultivator license relinquishment specifically. Again, here you're looking at FY 24 and FY 25 numbers for cultivators, where we are showing 59 relinquished licenses in 24 and 73 in this current fiscal year. The slide also categorizes relinquishments by cultivation type and tier to get a deeper, better understanding on specifics and nuances here. As sort of expected, outdoor tier 1 licensees have seen the most attrition, 23 in the prior fiscal year and 41 in fiscal year 25.
Yeah, and those are the people that were most adamant that they needed a path towards farmers markets, direct to consumer in the legislature, which did not happen.
Yeah. So again, we'll keep track of this data very closely moving forward. Here it's continues to be so we are looking at FY 24, but we're taking the cultivator data and sort of slicing this data by the licensee priority status to see who is the most impacted by relinquishments. Orange, you could probably tell, color-coded is most represented. That's our standard group. And at a glance, you could probably see that the majority of relinquishments impacted our standard folks. There were additionally 5 social equity relinquishments in 2024. So, and then green is obviously for economic empowerment. And then I have a similar slide. So this slide mirrors the last one, only this is for FY 2025. Cultivator relinquishments. Again, we're showing standard licensees having the most recorded relinquishments. Social equity folks are at 9 so far this year. And obviously tier 1, right, outdoor, mixed and indoor are represented primarily here. So that's what we got for the cultivator relinquishments. And now we are shifting to the license types other than cultivators. Again, so here we are looking at a 2-year snapshot of the remaining licensing categories. FY24 numbers are in yellow and 25 numbers for FY25 are in pink. Outside of our cultivators, you can see that manufacturers tier 2 have seen the most relinquishments so far, a total of 18, followed by manufacturers tier 1 at 10. And the other license types have seen much lower levels of relinquishments, single digits over the course of 2 years. And we'll jump into the priority status. Again, non-cultivator relinquishment data for FY24 by priority status. So that's what you're looking at here. Colors are the same. Orange indicates our standard licensees, green is economic empowerment, and blue social equity. So you could see 3 social equity licensees left market in 2024, and I think it's 10 standard licensees were impacted. And then again, 2025, the counterpart slide to the previous slide, showing 10 standard relinquishments, 6 economic empowerment, and 5 social equity for the current year. So that is all we got for the relinquishments. And ready to move on into compliance and enforcement, unless
I have one question. I wonder if in a future month we could look at what those relinquishments mean for market production. If we can look at track and trace and see if we've seen a significant decrease in the amount of product that's coming into. I know that not every licensee we license actually produces, so it would be helpful to know what that actually means in terms of production in the market.
okay.
If we have the
We probably
tools to
won't
pull that number together.
we probably won't have the data, but we can get a sense of who those licensees are, basically where they're producing a lot, or are those the types of businesses that struggled from the beginning and they just left the market without actually.
Yeah, or what their
I've never launched it.
or what their intent here
Yeah.
was, and it's more qualitative than quantitative.
Yeah.
And I've said it before. I've talked to at least one individual that just wanted to do one crop 1 year and make enough money to repave his driveway, and that was his life's goal when it came to cannabis production. And I don't know where that individual is in the marketplace now, if he's still around, so on and so forth. But whether it's how much canopy they're utilizing, where the board fell short, where the market and business community fell short, and communicating with each other in those types of instances, I think is helpful for us moving forward. How can we better connect and be connective tissue from a B2B perspective as not a business, but, and helping connect certain businesses with growers, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll look at what we can come up with. All right. We are ready to move on to the compliance data. All right, so we are looking at the great work of our compliance and enforcement team for June. A quick summary here, 107 inspections in June and 11 active investigations that were started by the team. The focus has been on our cultivators this past months, and no inspections or investigations involved our wholesalers or labs in the month of June. So that's a quick look here. In terms of the investigation types, here's a quick breakdown of the types of investigations that the team has been engaged in. Different charts reflect different license types. Okay. Moving on. So a quick look at the other types of actions by our compliance team. 3 months of data here. And June data is in this pale yellow color. You could probably tell our complaint count, which stands at 26 for the months, is relatively steady month over month, a bit less than the prior two, but fairly comparable. We issued no formal letters of warning this month, but it's mostly due to the timing. So we expect to see quite a few next month. And what else? We got 3 notices of violations, 7 recorded product destructions, and 8 documented cessations of operations. Good. And so here's what we have so far in terms of folks leaving the market. As you know, our team does exit interviews. Again, as long as folks are willing to share their reasoning, we always collect that information, including, there are multiple reasons for their exiting the market. We collect all that. So this is the data for the month of June. I believe 11 businesses left reported those reasons.
Do you have a sense of just generally what a site issue is?
Question. I'll ask.
I'm just curious what that entails.
Yeah.
And flexibility as well. Is that inflexibility of the board, or is it?
I don't think.
Is profitability a positive thing? Like my example with being able to repave your driveway, maybe.
So I actually have a note. So flexibility impacts not being able. For example, somebody gave a reason. It's not being able to take
your own
take a vacation because you're tied to a specific growing season.
Yes.
So that's a little bit personal. Again, it's 11 folks who reported. So we probably need a larger subset of data. So I think site issues might be a similar thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if any of the site issues had to do with the flooding or things like that.
Yeah.
I'll find out what specifically that was. We can get a little maybe cleaner categories so they track better. Okay, but we'll stay we'll stay on that. On complaint types received and processed last month. Interestingly enough, we are reporting a relatively equal split among various reasons. The one standout is a sales reporting violations that leading the way this month.
And the license requirements, is that someone operating outside what's allowed in their license?
Or, I'd say it's probably falling behind on their licensure. So maybe requirements related to the licensure itself. Okay. Yep. But again, I'll double check to make sure. Oh, jump to the next slide. Okay. And here we are looking at the notices of violations and the reasons they had been issued in June. We see advertising impacted both of them, each one of them. So that is a wrap for the compliance and enforcement data. And just one quick slide on our medical program next. Again, 12 months worth of data here. Year over year, our caregiver count is staying about the same. We're at 120, which is up from 116 in June of 2024. So the total patient count year over year is down 33, but we are showing an increase by 59 in the months of June when compared to May, which could be an anomaly. We also think it could be related to medical endorsements coming online next month. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye if it is a new trend here. So that is all. So at this point, that is all we got for the data portion. And now we are ready to move on to the staff recommendations for licensure.
Great. Yeah.
Good. Ready for that? Okay. So first is our staff recommendations for initial licensure. And we have just one aspiring tier 2 manufacturer for you today. Do you want to vote on that one first?
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to approve the application listed, issuance subject to final payment, required fees, and any other contingencies.
No, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. And now we are moving on to the conventional license renewals. We have 5 slides for you today. So lots of great work by our licensing team primarily. I think was pouring over the paperwork and all of the related activities. So I'll go through those for you. That's one of 5. Okay. So that is our slide 2. Again, primarily cultivators in this batch. This is the time. Move on to the next slide. So 3 of 5. Slide 4. Slide 5. So again, all of these licensees on this slide and the prior slides had submitted their materials in a timely manner and are all recommended for approval by our licensing team.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to approve the renewal of the applications listed, issuance subject to final payment of required fees, and any other contingencies.
No, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. So next on the list here are 6 establishments who have furnished all of the required documents for renewals. However, their complete filings came in outside of the renewal window. All 6 did provide supplemental narratives with written explanations for their late filings. All of the appropriate application records, including the narratives, have been shared with the board already. Staff does recommend that the board accept and approve this late completed applications as it is authorized to do by Rule 115.1D.
Any questions for Olga about any of these?
Nope.
No. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the recommendations?
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to accept and approve the late renewals of the applications listed, issuance subject to final payment of required fees, and any other contingencies.
Right.
And I was like,
Contingencies.
I was like,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Right. Another slide for you here. So here you're looking at 5 renewing establishments that have yet to satisfy prerequisites for renewal. All 5 have filed the explanations for untimely filings under Rule 115.1DI. Appropriate application records have been shared with the board ahead of this meeting. And at this point, each establishment is working with the licensing staff to meet all of the requirements. That renewal is appropriate. Staff recommends that this license should be continued until July 30th meeting.
Any questions about any of these? Yep. Okay, is there a motion to approve the late renewals and continuances?
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to accept and continue to allow the renewal process to be completed for the applications listed, subject to any final contingencies.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for that. And now I have one more slide here, and that's a new slide. So the three licensees shown here are requesting a second extension to complete their renewals, each already having received an extension from June through today. Each one requires additional time to satisfy legal requirements for renewal. The application record for each renewal applicant has been shared with the board members, including narrative explanations for requesting further extensions. Our licensing team expects that these applicants will be fit for renewal in the July 30th meeting. One thing I'll note is that FWR grassroots establishment is working conscientiously with our staff on an administratively complex restructuring of its licenses. Grassroots has not actually missed any deadlines or caused anything to slow down the renewal process. So I wanted to flag that. That being said, this is an unusual situation. We have three businesses here, and our licensing team will be happy to provide any further information to the board on any of these businesses in the deliberative session, if so required.
Yeah, if you guys are all right with it, I mean, a second continuance seems a little bit extraordinary. So if you don't mind, I would like to take a deliberative session to just hear about what is going on. I understand with grassroots, but the other two, I'd like to just get a little info on. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have a motion to enter into a deliberative session?
Well, I think
If you, I guess if you conceive of it as deliberating on the applications, you don't need one. In the alternative, you could conceive of it as an executive session to discuss the trade secrets of the businesses, same result. But technically, I think you can deliberate without having an express motion. We just,
Okay. Why don't we enter into a deliberative session to talk about the second request continuance. And we'll bring in our licensing director, acting director, to talk about that.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I think maybe 5, no more than 10, but probably 5, closer to 5. Patrick, would you mind just kind of putting up our away message, just noting that we're in a deliberative session?
Yeah, I can at the moment if Olga is still sharing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so why don't I end the slideshow right now? Pull this up. Okay.
Okay. So we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Just as a time check, it's 1:46 p.m. and we're just coming out of a deliberative session over a couple of late second requests and an extension for licensure or renewal. And it's just because a second request, I mean, historically, we've been pretty lenient. We know that this is a complicated licensing process, and we actually took some major strides in our rules to make it less complicated to get renewed. But of course, a second request for extension is unusual. And we wanted to dig into the rationale behind those. So I think I feel okay to go ahead and approve a second request in these circumstances, but is there a motion for that?
I move that the board adopt recommendations to accept and continue to allow the renewal process to be completed. For the applications that were previously listed, issuance subject to any other final contingencies.
And I will second.
Any discussion on those?
Nope.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Yeah, and that was actually my last slide. So.
Okay.
I wanted to know.
So then keep going down the agenda. This is our discussion with DEC solid waste.
Yeah, I know we have Shannon and Ben. I believe I saw them both on the list. Patrick, I'm assuming you've given them permissions. There's Ben and Shannon. Good afternoon. Thank you both for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, hello. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, do you want to lead this discussion a little bit?
Sure. I invited, obviously we talk a lot about in certain waste issues, whether it's packaging and this, that, and the other, but an opportunity here from our friends at DEC who focus on hazardous waste and organic waste, and thought it would just be, as we kind of approach more, into the growing season, the thick of summer, it was a good time to kind of introduce our friends at DEC, open up some lines of communication. We have a number of licensees on the call, and we'll post this after the fact, and we can always share your email addresses if that's something that you're comfortable with, or if you have a general inquiry box, whatever the case may be. Ben, Shannon, I defer to the two of you on who wants to kick things off. I'm not 100% sure if you have any presentation materials or not. Hopefully technology cooperates us if that is the case.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kyle. I don't have a presentation. Shannon, did you have anything prepared? You wanted to go first, or?
I was mostly going to show information that we have about our programs on our website.
Great.
And so I am only working off one screen, and so it might take me a second to figure this out. But you should
Sure.
all be able to see my screen. Great. So yeah, my name is Shannon. I work with the solid waste program at the DEC. A part of what we do is engage with business communities about properly managing waste. We have a variety of solid waste laws in the state of Vermont. I think the most well-known one is our universal recycling and composting law, which mandates that common recyclables such as plastic bottles, containers, cardboard boxes, paper, glass bottles and jars, and aluminum and steel cans and foil cannot be thrown out in the trash, and all Vermont communities have access to recycling those materials either through the waste hauler that you use or through public or private facilities. But today what I'm mostly going to talk about, and we can really, this is a discussion, and so if anyone has any particular questions, we can review that. But I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of what we refer to as our special recycling programs as well. These are actually, for the most part, extended producer responsibility programs. Extended producer responsibility is basically laws that are passed that require manufacturers to take responsibility, typically financially or operationally, of managing the products at their end of their life. And so in Vermont, we have a really robust collection for batteries, all types of batteries, specifically household one, large batteries over like 300 watt hours. We don't offer for collection in this program, but certainly if you have any of those, you can reach out to us at the state and we can help figure out disposal. But likewise, we have free, like I mentioned, free disposal for batteries at locations all across the state, free locations to dispose of certain numbers of bulbs, which mercury containing bulbs, which I would think maybe hopefully many of your stores don't have, or maybe like some of your operations probably don't use those lights, but maybe they do. And likewise, we have free programs for electronic waste, such as computers, monitors, televisions, for paint disposal. Again, other mercury containing products such as thermostats. And when it comes to house to hazardous waste, depending on how much your businesses generate, you may have access to local collection programs through your solid waste management entity, or you may generate too much hazardous waste that you're actually what would be considered a small or a large quantity generator, which would then need to work with the hazardous waste program. We only work with like the very small quantity generators, and helping them understand what is available for those household chemicals. But yeah, and so I guess this is really just a quick overview. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Just a quick overview of some of those more specialty recycling programs that we have in addition to your curbside or drop-off location. And with that, I just wanted to see what questions people have, because I can imagine that there may be some more specific questions from this group. So yeah.
I do have a few questions. Vape batteries. I mean, I know you guys are having a report. I think it got kicked out a year on the battery stewardship program.
It did, yes.
Familiar? Yeah. I'd love to help, coordinate or, what we should be thinking about with respect to vaping devices. The legislature has considered giving us some additional regulatory authority over the devices themselves, not just the cannabis products. And I know that they're interested in batteries. And other states have made strides saying that all vapes that are sold in the state need to have an easily removable battery.
Yes.
That ties into my other question about battery reclamation. Like what are the best ways to get people to kind of bring this stuff back, through a battery stewardship kind of concept? I'm just trying to think, like, we want to incentivize people to bring their waste back to a place where it can either be recycled or disposed of appropriately. But we don't want to make these products overly expensive, or we don't want to kind of put people out, but we certainly want people to have an incentive to bring them back.
Yes.
Get them into the right waste stream.
Yes. Well, yes, there certainly is concern to be had with lithium-ion batteries and single-use vape devices. Lithium-ion batteries are really in the news right now because of their capability to undergo a thermal runaway, which is a battery fire, essentially. And so it could be punctured, and it will spew out sparks that then can catch other things on fire as well. And so definitely, I think it is worth considering what regulations might be in place to try to make it so the battery is like not single use, not all wrapped into one, that the battery can be easily removed. I went to a national conference and we spoke a little bit about vaping devices, and one of the major feedbacks, and this is nicotine vaping devices, which obviously have the same concern with regards to the battery. And one of the major pieces of feedback I heard was that the battery can be recycled. The battery itself is not the issue. If we can easily disconnect it and then recycle it, that program is widely available, through our local call to recycle battery collection program. They will accept lithium-ion batteries, but will not accept the cartridge which contained any type of nicotine or cannabis. And so I think being able to separate those two components is highly critical for capturing as many of the batteries as possible. And I think, well, obviously your businesses may have to already navigate the disposal of Schedule 1 regulated like the DEA whole process. I've only known a little bit about that. And so, yeah, I think if the goal is the battery, trying to ensure that any vaping device sold in the state has an easily removable battery, would be very beneficial, I think.
Yeah, Shannon, you're speaking my language over here. I and you and I should connect. I've spoken with Mia about this, and I know they couldn't be here this week. I think they're on vacation, so
Yes.
lucky Mia. I co-chair the environmental committee for the Cannabis Regulators Association, and we're trying to grapple with vape waste from a cannabis-oriented vape. The challenge, as you alluded to, is a lot of states have single-use vapes, and they're pretty high in terms of their the revenue that they bring in for stores and for the state. Some states ban calling them single-use. Some states ban calling them disposable. Some states, like Vermont, outright bans them unless the battery can be easily removed. And I've heard concerns even as it relates to, I can separate the oil from the battery, but then the battery is encased in some type of alloy or metal or plastic, and that also creates some challenges getting to the actual lithium ion battery itself. So would love to kind of loop you into those, or whoever's the most appropriate on your team, to some of those conversations, because right now we're just trying to get on the same page in terms of nomenclature, because some states call these things different things and are operating their waste programs at various different levels of government, depending on how the state is structured. And it's a big tangled ball of yarn. So,
Yeah.
It's going to take a village for sure to figure out some of those issues. But we have some rules in place against single-use vapes unless that battery can be easily disconnected from the entire unit. And we are tracking data on how those batteries are disposed of and how the other hardware is disposed of as well, and who's bringing certain things back. And XYZ, I think it's like a pilot that needs to still be figured out how to scale to really feel some larger impact. But I think that's just some finer comments on Pepper's questions.
Yeah, certainly Mia could connect you with Call to Recycle, the battery recycling program, to better understand what does happen when lithium ion batteries are received in some type of a unit. Because I know they are receiving them. And I'm not sure the process that they reclaim battery. But yes, definitely.
Yeah, at our last meeting, we had a discussion. We have a prohibition on using plastic in cannabis products to kind of package cannabis products. But because of tariff issues and other issues, we had a conversation last month about how relaxing that standard a little bit, even if it's just temporary. Part of that for me would be having requiring kind of a stewardship program where either retailers or manufacturers that are, using plastic packaging have a responsibility to attempt to try to reclaim it. And I'm wondering if you know of any successful programs about, in the plastic context or otherwise, about how to kind of incentivize people to bring their products back. I mean, that's to me, kind of the key to unlocking more, plastic in the industry. Not that that's a goal, but that would be something that I would need to feel comfortable with, that there's actually an incentive to bring it back, or an obligation upon the manufacturers or retailers to try and reclaim that plastic.
Yes, well, obligations to do that really fall under extended producer responsibility, as I mentioned. And so those are typically passed through legislation, and, the legislators and create that bill that says manufacturers need to create a stewardship organization to take financial and or operational responsibility for the end of life management of their products, which is typically, everything from collection, transporting to recycling, following the waste hierarchy of recycling and disposal only when necessary. And so that's what I think of when I think of requiring manufacturers. There are laws on plastic packaging. There are, I believe, 7 states currently that are enacting product packaging extended producer responsibility for all types of packaging, which in those states, I would, if any of them have legalized cannabis like we do, I would assume that also includes that packaging. It's like any packaging for anything sold in retail. We haven't, well, I do believe there was a bill introduced a year or 2 ago about product packaging EPR. And I don't believe it went anywhere, but I do know, like, my team is trying to learn more about it because it is a conversation that is spreading across the country for this type of packaging. And likewise, another system that might have value is a deposit system. As we see with the bottle bill, similar. And of course, as you may know, the bottle bill, the bottle redemption system, that law was from the 1970s. And its goal was to decrease litter on the roads. And so, like, we might not see much like cannabis litter out there in our community, but we do know that deposit systems help get that material back to where we would like to see it go, into those recycling systems. And so, if there were to be a few dollar deposit on that vape battery, or something like that, it's hard to envision what that might look like. But those are the 2 methods that I see available. Some type of deposit where you would reclaim the money when you properly dispose of it. And then, of course, that puts all the owners on the consumer to make that right choice, and, potentially not make the right choice. And then you got to figure out what to do with those funds that build up when they don't redeem them, or requiring manufacturers to manage their packaging, as other states have begun to investigate.
That's helpful. It really is. Yeah. It's a complicated area, I will say. I mean, we thought that maybe we could encourage reuse of packaging. And what we heard pretty consistently from the beginning of this market is the sanitation is just, it's just too extreme to try and sanitize these, packaging that's been recollected at the retail level. So.
Mm-hmm.
Is our pilot with EcoStar done, or does it have another 3 months?
July 15th. So we'll want to, see how.
Yeah, is there some magic number on the battery deposit? I think we chose $3.
Five.
I can't remember.
$5.
Yeah, I'm
wondering what-
personally not sure if there's any research that says, at what value that deposit will actually, get that higher amount of return. There might be some type of research like that out there. Similarly, like with car batteries, you don't pay a deposit when you purchase it, but you do get a bounty when you return it. And so, it's a little bit more difficult to think of like paying someone money when they haven't paid it in, but if there is some way to adjust costs so that there could be a bounty program on that collection where they don't pay a deposit, but when they bring it in, they receive money for bringing it in. And of course, that would have to mean that the cost of goods would increase, I would think. But that is an option as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for helping us think through this issue. Are there any more questions?
No.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Ben, I know you're our resident expert in organic waste. You and I have conversed many a times.
Yeah. Do we have time, or do I have negative time? Does this end at 2?
No,
Oh, okay.
Please keep
The
going.
meeting invite I got set it into 2, so I thought I had no time left. I'll still keep it short. I don't want to keep everybody too long for no reason, but Kyle, please send my email and phone number to all the licensees. If they have questions about waste management, I'm happy to talk through that stuff. I work for the Agency of Natural Resources. Focus areas on organics, but also do trash and recycling as well. So there's a lot of overlap with the work that the licensees do. I still don't know all the ins and outs of this industry very well, or the terminology for sure, but I'm learning a lot on the fly here. I've worked with cultivators and stuff with dealing with plant residues, soil balls, different, fibers and vegetative waste that they've generated. I've worked with processors on pulp residue disposal, but also with the hazardous waste disposal, depending on what processes they use for extraction or whatever they have for technology that they employ. And then also I've dealt most recently with retailers and distributors on products that are non-saleable for one reason or another that they need to figure out how to get rid of, that often are in packaging or cans or whatever. So there's a lot of nuance to the waste disposal stuff. But the good news is that the contents of either the cannabis product itself or the vegetative material that's used to generate the products, it's all really it's all easily recyclable. It's all organic, and it can be managed within the infrastructure in the state that already exists. So it's just a matter of matchmaking primarily and trying to figure out how to get, oftentimes how to open the packaging and get the contents to the composter or to a digester for disposal. Now that's a little overly simplified. There are some issues sometimes depending on the destination, whether or not it goes to a farm. Agency of Agriculture may have concerns from their animal health and safety standpoint. But that's all stuff that we're sort of working through now, kind of live in real time, that we didn't really foresee ahead of time. And we're putting a lot of effort into that now. So I just want to encourage anyone that has any questions or any hangups with a specific waste management issue to reach out to me directly. Happy to hear from you on what the hangups are. And I know that our work, just from the past work that we've had with the Cannabis Control Board, they've been really receptive to modifying the waste disposal guidance that they have posted on their website, which I think is really solid. But I think we're still trying to work through some of particularly the consumable product disposal and how to best manage those in this state with all the different laws that apply to this industry and also to waste disposal. So I guess that's really all I wanted to say. I don't think there's too much to it, but thank you all for the invite to come here today. And like I said, please read.
Thank you, Ben. I think even keeping things short and helping folks remember that although we have the regulatory authority over cannabis, there's a lot of state agencies that are connected. Depending on the question. So it's always nice to be able to put a name and a face to an email address. So thanks for your time.
So if we had a retailer that was had a kind of reclamation program for cannabis packaging, you would want them to separate out any sort of organic material from the actual packaging to their best of their ability. Like you want to kind of dump whatever residual cannabis is in that package somewhere other than kind of, a bin filled with, plastic or glass packaging.
Typically, let's just take an example, like if it's a aluminum can with a beverage in it, the aluminum is highly recyclable. The liquid contents in the beverage can be digested for energy or for gas production. So both of those streams are valuable in their own right. So we would say, dump the can out, or there's actually depackaging methods in the state that are available too, but separate the two contents, recycle the can. And sometimes if you do it well enough, you can get a deposit for the can potentially. There's been some industry people that have done that in the waste management industry as well. And then anaerobic digestion of the liquid contents, either at a wastewater treatment plant or through a solid waste digester, is a potential pathway where you can sort of reclaim both recyclable materials. But yeah, if there's cardboard, that's highly recyclable. There's a lot of packaging materials that have value in the recycling industry that it makes sense to separate the contents from the packaging and recycle both.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't think we've ever, I completely agree. And I don't think we've ever provided consumer guidance on what you do if you separate the the contents from the packaging and you're going to recycle the packaging. Like, what do you do with if there's leftover flour or gummies or something like that? Do you just throw them in the trash? You know, what are you supposed to do with that?
That's a great question. And yeah, that's a great question. And we actually, this came up at our last meeting, last time we met with the Cannabis Control Board. What we determined was that taking a step backwards in the state, there's a food residuals disposal ban. So, you know, in the state of Vermont, it's illegal to throw away food residuals into the landfill. We were faced with some cannabis products and we were trying to make a determination on whether or not that qualifies as food residual. And ultimately where we landed was that it's not. You know, it's not a food inherently, it's more of it's in its other category, right? So we separated that out. And so technically, based on that determination, it's legal to dispose of, you know, if you had a package of gummies in plastic packaging. I don't even know what they're packaged in, but let's just say hypothetically it's in a plastic packaging, it's okay to throw that away. But the contents are really recyclable and they're organic and we can use them for soil building in the state. So there's value there. So what we wanted to do is we want to encourage people by making it as clear as possible in the guidance, like encourage people to recycle the organics to the greatest extent possible with the backstop that if you're really in a pinch, it's not required. But you know, people in Vermont, they're agricultural minded, they're environmentally minded, they kind of want to do the right thing. So we've seen a lot of people kind of comply with it just voluntarily.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ben. And then we have been working on some updated guidance to waste management that should be hopefully published in the coming weeks. So
Great.
thank you for your time today, Ben.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
I thought that we may want to tack on to this discussion, a conversation about medical product weight or packaging. I know we've been getting some requests with the medical use endorsement coming up that we make accommodations for products that are exclusively, the packaging for products that are exclusively available to medical patients. And, you know, I think the goal here would be to make sure that, you know, patients don't have to pay more for their products. Keep those as inexpensive as possible for the patients. And I think we talked about this a little bit during our rulemaking. I think the way that the rule that we ended up with is written requires us to make a decision about exactly what we think about the intersection between our plastic prohibition and medical products. I think the rule says something along the lines of, paraphrasing here, that, you know, medical products shall be in compliance with all packaging rules unless the board, you know, makes exceptions.
Yep.
Something to that effect.
And prior to that, there was no particular rule around packaging for medical, right? They didn't have to abide by the.
I don't believe so.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So requiring medical products to, you know, be in non-plastic packaging will probably lead to an increased cost for medical.
And it's a change for people who are already producing them.
Right. A secondary topic that we can discuss today too is around child resistance for medical products. I think in the pharmaceutical context, you know, pharmacies are allowed to make accommodations for people with arthritis or inability to kind of open products that are child resistant. So I think those, are there any other issues that you wanted us to discuss at all in this topic that would help direct the staff as to what kind of guidance they need?
We could talk maybe about the coming 3.7.3 generally and how, you know, you envision it working.
Okay. And do you have the
That's the
I'm
medical
sorry.
package.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
like reading it over Dave's shoulder right now.
I have the text of it right here. I'm
Yeah.
happy to,
Are you willing to put it up?
yeah, can I plug that thing into this?
Yes, you can.
All right.
Somebody
Let's
could-
wait. Broadcast here. Oops. All right, I'm not sure what happens when I plug this in, but the important rule is 3.7.3, may or may not. There we go. the earth. Okay, all right, sorry about that. So here's 3.7.3, and what it says is medical products must conform to the general requirements provided, however, that departures can be authorized in board guidance. And I think that's sort of instructive as to how do we want to do this. One-offs are really not desirable. I think simple guidance that says such things as, if necessary to facilitate arthritis, arthritic or access to people with arthritis or other dexterity issues, the caps don't need to be shock resistant. The statute is compatible with that. So it strikes me that what you had in mind based on the language, as well as the most practical way to do this, would be broad brush guidance that is considerably more flexible than the current categorical waivers, because there are so many legitimate reasons that a medical product may need to be more may need to contain plastic that is just easier to justify in that context, and you could maybe be less rigid. But guidance, I think, would be the vehicle to create those categories.
Yeah. And can you remind me? I think it's up there. If in the definition section we have a definition of medical product.
We do. Medical product is defined as a product that is legal for sale in the medical system, but not legal for sale as a registered retail product.
And that's how I remember us making that distinction. Right? It's a product that is exclusive for medical patients at a retail establishment with a medical use endorsement that does not need to be in packaging that would otherwise need it.
So this is a really narrow group of products, potentially.
Really narrow group of products. High potency concentrates,
patches,
transdermal patches, suppositories. I think the tough one for me potentially is gummies that are above 5 milligrams per serving, or that exceed the kind of 100 milligrams per package, but it's not different. I guess as a general point, does anyone have a problem with us allowing plastic for medical products based upon the definition that Gabe just said?
I don't.
No, I think we discussed that at the board meeting too.
Yeah. Okay.
Or the rules meeting.
And so we'll defer the specifics to be TBD and guidance.
Specifics and guidance. Yeah, but that's the general consensus. And then,
I'm just curious, what specifics would that be? It sounds very much
like CNR paper.
Yeah. For instance, where you think that there's a question that will come.
Like what?
I mean, there's we have the plastic prohibition, and I think the question the policy question, everybody agrees that 373 says much more flexibility for medical because they're just more justified reasons. Do you want to say just plastic rule doesn't apply to medical, period, which is, I think, how some people could hear the conversation that we're having now, or do you want to say plastic rule presumptively applies to medical, but it's just a lot more flexible for all the reasons we talked about? And there'll be separate guidance about it. Under the current, combining your current no plastics rule and the waiver standard in Rule 2 and applying those to adult use products, you get that kind of necessity requirement. I mean, it has to be literally necessary. There's not another way to do it, even if it's a little more expensive or undesirable. I think you want a lower standard for medical, that it's just that there's a rational reason or a rational reason the plastic would facilitate service to a certain patient group.
What would be easier to administer? Have you thought just exempting medical products from whatever rule the plastics?
Well, that would be the easiest way, of course, right? If anything that comes through the inventory tracking system or product registration system with an M prefix is exempt from a plastic prohibition, obviously that would be the easiest. And if that's what, because I'm trying to understand if that's where we are headed with the board, because I think Gabe's reading of the rule is slightly different than what I think you were talking about. I could be just misunderstanding though. So.
What,
I'm just struggling because like if somebody with a card walks into a retail store and they can purchase flour tax-free, but it is not a medically defined product.
Right.
I don't want that flour in plastic packaging.
neither do I.
That's it,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
I and what I think we're talking about is that if it meets the medical product definition,
Right.
Yes.
those things would be, like, I think we're talking about being exempt from the other packaging rules.
Well, not all of them. So I'd still want to have
The plastic packaging.
the plastic packaging.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess that's the question. So there's going to be this category, and this might be a good time to give airtime to the other nuances of how this will be
Yes.
implemented. The last sentence in there, people will notice it's
Right.
black and white only.
Right.
Yeah.
That'll serve a really important purpose in time.
Right.
But two things to emphasize that I think you all agree on in terms of how it'll be implemented is people that already produced colorful stuff will be able to sell through it. They don't have to throw it out or
Right.
repackage it. So there's no reason to panic about that. And the black and white color will be reserved for what we call literally medical products that are legal for sale in the medical system, not legal for sale as
Right.
rec. And so it's really that category of soon to be all black and white stuff. Do you want to just say no plastic rule applies to that, or you need a good reason? I'll just point out that by contrast with the standard that applies to adult use, which is necessary to effectuate a purpose of the legislature, this is a much more flexible standard written right into here that comes down to convenience, necessary to facilitate safe and convenient access by patients. So if you make a convenience argument, I guess I'm over talking this. You could either say the door is completely open, or the door is open to people who have a coherent, credible convenience argument that's more than I just like to use plastic.
What you're talking about now, having to make the argument sounds like another administrative process, though. Like there would be another process to figure out, one, this is a medical product, and two, it meets these standards. And I think I'm in favor of making access to the medical as quick and easy to the market as possible.
I am, unless I'm missing a concern that
I'm struggling to wrap my head around the distinction right now.
Yeah.
okay.
I do have another question though about black and white when we're done with this conversation.
My preference would be just to exclude the medical only products as they're defined in this rule.
Okay.
From the plastic prohibition. Period.
Okay.
Yep.
No,
That definitely is easier to administer.
Okay.
But in this way, it's okay to have a rule, all of them have to be administered. But if your judgment is that it's not worth the nuance, that it's better just to go ahead.
this is a small number of products, by the way. If you remember our
Yeah.
patient survey results, it's very few people that actually, very few patients that respond to that survey, which
Yeah.
is maybe like 20% of them or
Yeah.
something, actually are exclusively that are using medical only. I mean, most people are going for flower gummies
Right.
that would otherwise be legal
Right.
in the adult use side.
Medical products as they're defined in our rules is how I've been thinking about plastic exemptions broadly for medical products.
Okay.
I think there are some challenges that we will have to work through as the MOU comes online, like Pepper alluded to, higher dosages for gummies, higher package limits for gummies, and how do we feel about those? I think it's hard to kind of wrangle all of those issues into this one broad decision though.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing is that we want to exempt medical only products from the plastic prohibition, subject to us kind of all being able to look at the guidance and make sure no other issues are raised by the staff and trying to actually put words on paper on this. Seems simple enough, but you never know. Yeah. And then black and white packaging.
Oh, I don't know, but is that meant to include, or did we mean to include branding? So if somebody brands their product with a black and white logo, or is it just a label that describes what's in the package? And I don't think we
the
Got that
former,
far
I
in the
think.
com-
I
okay.
think the idea is there be no color print.
Well, that's how it was in my head when we were talking
Yeah.
about it, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
I think that's how I read it.
Okay.
Yeah, the only
Okay.
thing we say is provided that the warning symbols may be colored, so the only
Right, of course,
exception.
right.
is-
But in terms of branding, we didn't really talk about that.
And then I guess in guidance, we'll talk about how to identify people that need that non-child resistant lid. Like how retailers, I mean, I assume it'd be on a case by case basis. Someone a patient would have to request it from a retailer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the standard in pharmacy is that, presumptively you're getting the child resistant thing, but if the patient requests it of the pharmacist, they say, okay, here's your thing, you know better the safety of your household, whether the kids are around it.
Okay.
And they don't have to demonstrate in any way that they require the non-child resistant, like you don't have to
No.
provide a I don't want that. I don't want people to have to demonstrate to a retailer.
I think whenever possible, we said a similar thing about privacy.
Yep.
Whenever possible, we have this kind of standard that is retail pharmacy that everyone's used to.
Yep.
So just apply the same principles, basically, even though it's not a literal pharmacy. And,
Yep.
Same idea about privacy, same idea about my pharmacist. If I say, hey, my hand's a mess, I don't want the lid, they don't make me show them a picture of my house or my wrinkle, convince them my hand's a mess. They just say, okay, you've asked.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Any other guidance you need from us on the preparation of the guidance for this section?
My feeling is you really want to keep it super simple,
Right.
and not have a complex system and, exempt most things and maybe elbow out almost everything, and then elbow out a little bit of room for staff to hit the brakes if there's literally no safety or convenience to be gained by the thing you want.
Okay.
But and as all guys pointed out, this is a small piece of the market, so
Could we, as it relates to the child resistance, include in guidance that when somebody gives a packaging that's not child resistant, that they recommend that somebody keep it up and away from children and pets or locked if possible? We can include that as a.
yeah, you could include a requirement for special patient counseling. You could include an extra labeling. That's
I don't want to go really far. I think that's responsible retailing to begin with, but a reminder in the guidance I think would be helpful.
yes, I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right. Great.
I think we got what we
All right.
needed.
Great.
And,
All right.
we have July 1 to get it all put together.
Okay. Moving down the agenda then, next is a review of H321, which is now Act 56, 2025. I'm not going to pull it up. I'll just quickly review it. Again, this was what ended up kind of passing was largely provisions that were asked for by the board. I think there are some important provisions which hopefully will save money for the industry in the long run, but really the kind of more market expansion, the issues that the industry was looking for were not included in the final bill. Section 1, this section just clarifies that law enforcement who currently have the authority to seize cannabis that's illegal by law also can seize cannabis that's illegal pursuant to administrative rule duly adopted by the board. So this would include things like we banned Delta 8 THC or some of the synthetics and those types of things. Cannabis that's been adulterated by pesticides potentially. Section 2, this is our third attempt, I think, at getting the FBI to authorize the board to receive fingerprint supported background checks through the FBI. I know everyone right now who's a principal or owner has to kind of go through a CSI process. It costs quite a bit of money. If the board was authorized to receive fingerprint supported background checks by the FBI, you could go to your local sheriff station, get your fingerprints done, pay, I think, $35, and the FBI would send it directly to us. There's about 97 different, law enforcement agencies in the state that have this authorization. We've been denied multiple times by the FBI, and that's why we have to go through this third party. If the FBI is to accept this language, then it'll be significantly less expensive for the industry as a whole for getting your background checks. Section 2B adds a new member to migrant justice, or from migrant justice to the Land Access and Opportunity Board. That's unrelated to cannabis. Section 3, this is essentially just a repeat of something that happened last year. That just, last year, the bill said that certain hemp products that the board has deemed intoxicating need to be treated like cannabis products. So all of the kind of Rule 2.17 thresholds that would trigger a hemp-derived product to be treated like cannabis will be treated like cannabis. Really a technical amendment. Section 5, this, generally speaking, just continues to allow us to use a variety of different third-party background check companies. If, for instance, the FBI denies our application for criminal history records again. Section 6, this amendment removes a statutory requirement that the CCB issue a temporary employee ID card while it processes an employee ID application. Very technical. There's a shall that got turned into a may, essentially, about us issuing a temporary employee ID card. We've gotten a lot faster at turning those around, and there's no real reason to have temporary cards anymore, except in unusual circumstances. Section 7, this is kind of the receivership, corollary. Essentially, the CCB has encountered a few instances last year and prior to that where a cannabis business can no longer operate under its current licensed owners. Because of a divorce that happened, or a license revocation, or someone who's insolvent. And, what would happen in the case of a bank dissolving or some other business is a company or a court might appoint a receiver to wind down that business, sell off assets, pay creditors, et cetera. That can't necessarily happen in the same way in the cannabis context, because you have to be licensed by us and you have to go through this kind of, long licensing process. This would allow us to kind of bless that court-appointed receiver to wind down a cannabis company on a temporary basis. Section 9 requires that cannabis packaging include a harvested date as well as a packed-on date, which is currently required. This just will help avoid any misrepresentation into the actual age of a product. Section 10 allows propagation cultivators to sell their seedlings directly to retailers who can sell them to, their customers, home growers. Just by kind of a quirk of the way the propagation license was drafted originally, propagators are only allowed to sell their plant material to other cultivators, not to retailers. Section 12A. This is kind of a big one. I'm going to come back to this at the end. Section 13, it was a request from the tax department. Essentially, when businesses are transferring, tax department kind of gives people some assurances that people are up to date on paying all of their taxes. And for some reason, they didn't include the cannabis excise tax in this. So this is just about transparency for transfers of businesses. Really a technical correction. Section 13, not related to cannabis. It's about synthetic nicotine products and making sure they're taxed the same way as other tobacco products. Section 14, again, not really all that critical. It just deleted a reporting requirement for the auditor. But Section 12A. So as the legislature likes to do, they take a lot of ideas that are supported by a large number of people, and then they turn them into study committees so that they can look at them next year. So they did that with a number of proposals this year. One is the fee schedule. And, in a typical year, about a third of state government goes to the legislature with recommendations around adjusting fees. That has not happened with the cannabis industry. There was a proposal earlier this year to reduce some fees for outdoor cultivators and increase some for higher tiers of indoor cultivators. The legislature did not take a lot of testimony on that and didn't have a lot of time to digest that proposal. So they put it into a report requirement for the board. This is a really important report for a number of reasons, because, when we created our initial fee schedule, we did so kind of in the ether, the pre-market ether, when we didn't know what the entrepreneurial interest was going to be. We didn't know how many people were going to join, or whether we got the tiers right or wrong, the size is right. We created tiers of manufacturing licenses, but we didn't create tiers of retail licenses. We didn't, we kind of chose arbitrary markers for the differences between a tier 2 and a tier 3 manufacturer. So, this report is not just going to be about should some fees go up and other fees go down. I think this report really should be, did we get the kind of authorizations of what those tiers are? Do we get the market structure right? Do we need to adjust it? So we're not going to do this in a bubble. I think everyone who's been with us from the beginning knows that we spent a huge amount of time through our kind of subcommittee process, our market structure subcommittee, taking a ton of testimony from the industry, from the prospective industry, about what the market structure should look like. And we fully intend to do that again with this. So I would encourage anyone who's listening or watching that if you want to be part of that stakeholder input process, to email us at ccb.info@vermont.gov. That's ccb.info@vermont.gov. Try and make the title of the subject line of the email kind of conspicuous to this, like 12A report or fee report, and just ask to be a part of the process. And later on in the summer, we'll start kind of convening working groups to hear from cultivators, manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers, of course, our testing labs, propagators, and just see, do the fees need to be adjusted? Did we miss opportunities in the original fee schedule? And do the authorizations of those various licenses need to be adjusted? And hopefully get a comprehensive package to give to the legislature well in advance of next session, so that they can actually take some testimony and consider this fully. That's the fee part of that report. Another part of the report relates to the Cannabis Business Development Fund, which is a fund that was created to support social equity businesses, just given the lack of access to banking, lack of access to lending, disproportionate tax treatment. It was funded through a series of one-time funds, and as a result, I think ACCD has not really taken the time to set up a long-term kind of vision for that fund. For any social equity business, you get a certain number of hours of technical support plus a kind of one-time check. And what the report is asking us to do is to think, should there be a dedicated revenue stream to that fund every year, so that we can set up kind of longer term, more impactful programs to support cannabis businesses. Another aspect that, we explored last summer when we were dealing with a similar project is, should we expand the scope of who's eligible for this fund? If there is going to be more money coming into it, should it include tier 1 cultivators? And should include tier 1 product manufacturers? So that's another part of this report. I think Julie and Kyle are going to take the lead on this. We've hired a consultant, and part of their charge is to help us through this process as well. How do we better support small businesses in the cannabis industry? So I think, again, we're going to rely on a lot of stakeholder engagement later on in the summer and fall to try and come up with a more comprehensive plan for how we can better support cannabis businesses in the absence of kind of other state supports. That, our state spends a lot of money doing economic development for housing and dairy and other industries, and very little on cannabis. So I think there will be an appetite to direct some additional cannabis revenue towards this fund. But we got to give them a clearer picture of what that would be spent on. And in addition to that, there's a kind of tack on to that is should the Land Access and Opportunity Board also be getting a portion of the cannabis excise tax, not for supporting the cannabis industry, but for the broader question about community reinvestment, specifically kind of providing safe and additional housing opportunities for people that have been, historically marginalized by government-led activity. So that I know that, it's not much a report, but it is a very important report that I think will be heard. And so, it's our foot in the door in the legislature to talk about these very important issues. Anything you want to add about either those reports or the bill in general?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I was kind of going through my checklist as you were talking. I think you hit it all.
Great. All right. That was really quick. The bill, Act 56, 2025, it's available on the legislative website if anyone wants to go through it themselves. Julie, next on the agenda is the labor survey.
Yeah. So we have Alberto Bustamante with us, which is excellent. So folks might remember that in 2023, the board did a workforce survey. And we asked some sort of basic data about pay and employment and benefits. And I'm trying to remember some of the other things. Educational and a little bit about work background. At the time, we had about 413 employee ID card holders, and now we have more than 1,000, I believe. So, it is a good time to do that survey again and to have that survey evolve to tell us a little bit more about the labor industry or the labor in this industry and what the workforce looks like and how it's contributing to Vermont. So just to introduce the intern that's going to work with us this summer, this is Alberto. He is a recent grad from Vermont State University, Linden. He is a talented baseball player. He was there on scholarship. Was also president of the student government while he was there and had some national leadership roles in sports and was also selected to be the student speaker at commencement this year as well. So we can expect great things from Alberto, and he is here with us this summer expanding his education and career through working with this survey. So do you want to talk about your perspective on this and your approach?
Yeah, so I think just to start off, as you mentioned, the cannabis industry in Vermont is growing. And so just being able to get a full scale evaluation of where our labor force is at, and then what can be improved through legislation or any regulation. And so I'm just going to talk over the survey, kind of what my initial thoughts are and what I've been talking with some people about how to structure it. So we wanted to cover general demographics, job roles and sectors, try to differentiate if there's any difference between the sectors, what are the differences and why they're there. We want to do wages. We're still a little hesitant about doing anything for benefits, like any questions, just because benefits can be so broad and it can probably slow down this process. To go along with that, our scope initially was it's kind of big. I think we're talking about now kind of bringing down the scope and making it more focused onto important things such as, like I said, demographics, job roles, and benefits. And I think we're still talking about whether you want to add things like equity and inclusion in the workforce, especially because it's growing and it's so new. I think that's something that is important to keep an eye on and track and see if there are specific trends that are growing along with the industry that maybe shouldn't be growing. So all this data will help us identify where the cannabis industry can use support in the labor industry, not in the industry, and then also address wage concerns and benefit concerns. And we also wanted to talk to see how people are being trained. I know I wanted to add a section about if all employees are being trained for the right regulations, including media and the business people as well. So I think that is where we're at right now. Our timeline right now, I think we want to have something out by mid to late July. I think that's correct. And so if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
I'll just add that Alberto's also been talking with other folks in our agency to sort of do some research. And then today had a conversation with the Department of Labor, who of course, you know, has a great deal of skill in doing these types of surveys. And that was very insightful. So questions, thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Alberto, for helping us get everything together.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is an important thing that would happen in any other industry, but you know, I have to do it all.
I mean, it is true that at some point, the businesses that have started up in Vermont will probably receive a survey in the mail from the Department of Labor or you know, the federal government or anyone else who does these surveys. Some of them are required by law, but the industry itself won't be identified in those surveys. So for example, hospitality, which is my background, is typically identified in those surveys. So you can see things like what the, you know, OSHA injury rates are and the rates of pay and the trajectory for those industries. And we won't have that for cannabis for some time, but it is for us as board members, you know, what the employment looks like tells us a lot about the health of the market.
That's great.
Cool.
Listen, thank you, Alberto.
Thank you for this opportunity, because this will help me learn a lot as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Last on our agenda before the executive session is we have a application for an employee ID card, and there was a presumptive disqualification. You guys had a chance to look at the memo?
Yes.
Is there a need for a executive session on this?
I don't have.
I'm okay. Yeah, I think I'm okay. Yeah. Okay. Any discussion at all? Any questions for Melissa or Gabe?
Nope.
All right. Then is there a motion? Do we need to, if we find that he's overcome presumptive disqualification, sorry, I've done this a million times. We need to vote on it?
Yes, if you have a unanimous feeling and don't need to deliberate, you could make a motion. And
so is there a motion to find that this prospective employee has overcome presumptive disqualification?
I move that the board accept the staff recommendation to approve the employee ID card for the applicant that was presented to us.
No, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, as I mentioned at the outset, we've added one item to the agenda. It's an executive session to discuss hemp. And it's the last thing on our agenda. So we're not going to make any decisions in that executive session. We're going to have a conversation around hemp, and we will come back and then adjourn. So there's no real reason for people to hang around. You're more than welcome to. But that's the plan. And do you have a motion for that?
I move that the board enter executive session pursuant to 1 VSA subsection 313 to discuss a matter of which premature public knowledge would place this agency at a disadvantage, specifically pending or probable litigation and privileged attorney-client consultation, both as authorized by subdivision 313A1.
No, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are back. It is Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. It's 3:31 p.m. Just emerged from our executive session where we discussed hemp. We didn't make any decisions. Just got some updates. I think the only thing we have left to do on the agenda is to adjourn. Yep. All right. Well, then I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to the whole team at the CCB for the great work. And we'll see you all next month.